Hello there. Forget the armbands, you sanctimonious bunch of hypocrites. If you object so much to the Qatari human rights infringements, you shouldn't be there. And that goes for players, commentators and fans too. Now, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and then like and comment below. If you care so much about human rights, you should be back in Britain giving press conferences stating why you were not prepared to sell your souls out for a few rials to bolster the ambitions and rules of the Qatari regime. Why is the woke BBC even covering any of this? How much did the rights cost the licence fee payer? Why is GB News giving it airtime? After all the bluster about wearing armbands and sticking the message to the Qatari regime, all we got was a weak-kneed cave-in. Where's the principles? Where's the coverage of them returning to their hotels, packing their bags and flying home? Which would send out the strongest message? Caving in or sticking to your morals? Just about the whole lot of them went over there for money and or glory, promising to send a message as a way to excuse their grubby actions. With the money they get being based on questionable human rights and being used to grease the tongues of certain well-known soccer presenters, the players themselves, and, we're told, some of the supporters who've been handsomely rewarded to act as mouthpieces for the Qatari regime. I don't care about them criticising FIFA and the Qatari regime while they're over there and getting paid for it. They should not be out there, full stop. Anyone who attends or even watches who claims to be green or a believer in human rights is a pure hypocrite. Every second this charade continues gives both FIFA and the Qatari regime increased legitimacy. And when they get back to the UK, you can bet that the same old faces will still be lecturing us on our carbon footprints and our racism, etc., just after they've milked what they can from Qatar. Hypocrites. Well, we have come a long way, haven't we? The Tory parliamentary party didn't like Boris Johnson, so they defenestrated him. They didn't want Liz Truss either, so they pushed her into the nearest ditch, and they all sighed with relief as Rishi Sunak went through the door into number 10 with Jeremy Hunt living next door. The grown-ups are back in the room, claimed the Tory MPs. But now there is already disquiet on the backbenches. That growth-destroying autumn statement, which will turn aspiration into despair and place a massive brake on productivity, has alarmed the Tory backbenches, because it has alarmed their constituents. Their constituents liked Boris, their constituents liked Liz. But no, the MPs overruled them and put Sunak in place. And now Sunak has kicked their constituents firmly in the financials, leading to a grassroots backlash. No wonder Tory MPs are getting nervous, with reports saying that they will be dishing out some harsh words about this autumn statement when debate starts in the House of Commons at about 5 o'clock today. Here's what a couple of MPs told the Telegraph. I think amongst membership there is a lot of reticence to accept the autumn statement. It is distinctly unconservative. Those I have spoken to back home are, like me, concerned. It's very much dark and gloomy, and that's not what our party stands for. The mood of the party, apart from a minority who like Sunak and wanted all this sort of stuff, is seething with anger and disbelief that a Conservative government could do this. I wonder how many letters of no confidence the chair of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady, has already accumulated in his safe. But those seething MPs will still undoubtedly vote the budget through with nothing more than a grumble. Keeping their place in the party is no doubt far more important to them. Wonder what their constituents will be thinking right now. Will they be tempted to get the scissors out and dispatch their cut-up card to the litter bin? And maybe sign up to a different political party, one that does not espouse full-on communism? Now, there was a stinging backlash against Rishi and his team when the story came out that the government was gearing up to sell Brexit out by taking the UK into a Swiss-style trade treaty with the EU. Something I questioned in yesterday's video, pointing out that it was a ridiculous proposal because the EU itself hates the deal they have with Switzerland, so it would never get off the ground with the UK. But the Prime Minister has now stated that this is all just rumour and speculation. And he told the Confederation of British Industry Conference that, "On trade, let me be unequivocal about this. Under my leadership, the United Kingdom will not pursue any relationship with Europe that relies on alignment with EU laws." Well, that sorted that out then, doesn't it? Or is it like him trying to convince us that he's not a wealth redistributing communist? But at least the Prime Minister has rejected calls from the Remainer-biased CBI for the government to open the borders to get more workers in, or face a decade of stagnation. But our population grows every year, and it's never enough people as far as the likes of the CBI are concerned. It's productivity that needs addressing, not just throwing more cheap labour at the economy to profit the corporates. And now over to Richard, who is very annoyed at the 1960s.
Thank you, Jeff, and good evening. I have had enough of being force-fed a romanticised version of history regarding the 1960s and all the so-called cultural icons that it spawned, such as Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, who, as it turns out, are as seemingly corporate as those they used to rage against. Just look at the reason why they left Spotify, because of the comments made by Joe Rogan over a multi-billion-pound mandated medical procedure that they both quite clearly backed. Yeah, peace, man. F off. Ah, but they are cultural icons. So what? Means nothing, except the establishment they are supposed to be against chose to make them iconic figureheads. Other than that, they are overrated songwriters with barely passable voices. And let us not forget the beautiful voice of Bob Dylan, another overrated singer-songwriter. I would rather twist my own testicle than listen to him singing live, yet our society has given him godlike status, even though he sort of admitted to signing a pact with the devil. Hey man, don't be so heavy! Anyway, back to the 1960s. Why are we so hell-bent on celebrating an era that ushered in the end of traditional family values? And no, I'm not talking about the repression of women by overbearing men. The irony is the values that gave us the 1960s social revolution now subjugate men, and especially white men. It seems equality was never on the agenda in this pseudo-age of fake enlightenment, and therefore I personally would rather we were more realistic in our appraisal of history and not view our past through the eyes of our media and entertainment industries. Personally, I would love to go back to the 1950s Britain, but then again, my own rose-tinted impression of life in that era is also based on a distorted view of the past. My gripe with the 1960s is simple. That's when the moral, liberal left rot set in, and the 1970s bore its fruit. Back over to you, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Richard. And finally, when subscribing, please don't forget to press that little bell and also select the all option, or you won't get any notifications when I publish a new video. And thank you all so much for taking the time to watch the show.